On today's Murder, She Wrote podcast, everything was beautiful at the ballet. Until someone got murdered, that is. Hello and welcome to the Murder, She Wrote podcast, where I watch every single episode of the hit 80s/90s show Murder, She Wrote, starring 3-time Academy nominee and 5-time Tony winner Angela Lansbury. Today we're going to be I'm your host DJ, and today I will be talking about the episode Season 1, Episode 10, Death Takes a Curtain Call. Air date December 16th, 1984. Alright, here we go. This episode is a little bit better than We're Off to Kill the Wizard, but any episode that seems to lag and not have a lot of suspects or twists and turns, Angela Lansbury makes it worth watching. Okay, so we start off this episode in Cabot Cove. Mrs. Fletcher is at home. She is excited about an upcoming performance of the Russian ballet, where 2 Soviet ballet dancers are making their American debut. And she is going with her good friend, Leo Peterson. The ballet is in Boston. They're watching the coverage about it on television when a woman in a distinguishedly green coat goes up to the news crews and says, ban the ballet, which is her only purpose in this whole entire episode, I promise you. I did not do a screenshot of her, but I did do a screenshot of Jessica with a confused look on her face when the crime is being explained to her. And her expression pretty much is how I feel about this episode, which I'll get to at the end, and I'm going to put that on the video in your visual aid instead of the usual Murder, She Wrote book, so you have something new to look at when you're listening to this. So Ethan tells her the pie is good, and that it's good as it always is, and he says, and I would tell you if it tasted different. So we then, during our opening credit sequence, go to the ballet in Boston. And the exterior shot that they use, I swear they've used this exterior shot in The Golden Girls before, in Melrose Place, and in several shows I've seen it. But I couldn't take a screenshot of it because the title appears over the building, so I couldn't really show you it. So Mrs. Fletcher and Leo goes in, and they are greeted by a man named Palmer Eddington, who is handing out the programs. Mrs. Fletcher knows him from a lecture that he was at, that she happened to be, I guess, speaking at, and so they know each other. They introduce each other, and Mrs. Fletcher notices that Palmer gives her a regular program from the top stack and then gives Leo a program on the bottom. She finds this odd. She's very observant. Meanwhile, backstage, we get introduced to Mr. Fleming, a womanizer who decides to hit on Nathina, who, oh, I'm sorry, Irina, who is a dancer in the company. No, I'm sorry, I was right. It was Nathina. Um, and basically, Mr. Tochinsky, the security guard officer of the KGB, stops him and basically says that he may not um, hit on anyone in this company and threatens him. And he's basically says, oh, just try it. Just try it, I dare you, because you can't do anything. I can talk to whomever I want. So he's not a really great guy. Don't really like him all that much. Meanwhile, Natalia goes to congratulate Irina and Alexandra, who are making their American debut in the ballet in America. They are very nervous, but yet excited about the prospect of performing. And Natalia basically tells them that they will, that America will love them. The ballet goes off without a hitch. Mrs. Fletcher notices before it starts that there's a number 19 written on Leo's program. When she tries to tell him this, unfortunately, the ballet starts. I'm not sure exactly what ballet this is. Sorry, I had to get a drink of tea. But it does play the familiar song we've heard in various movies, like so I'm not sure what ballet this is. I don't think it's the Nutcracker. So the ballet is over. At one point, Mrs. Fletcher notices that Palmer, the program guy, goes backstage, and Leo even excuses himself at one point. And then he quickly comes out and tells Mrs. Fletcher they must leave. And they leave. The major of the KGB notices that Alexandra and Afina is not on stage for their curtain call, hence the title Death Takes a Curtain Call, and they discover Mr. Tochinsky dead in their dressing room. Mrs. Fletcher then discovers that Alexandra and Afina are in the car with her and Leo. They want to flee from Russia to be free in America. Mrs. Fletcher agrees to help them because Athena happens to be Leo's great niece, and he fled from Russia himself. He had a promising career as a dancer, but unfortunately a light fell and it ended his career. We find out this later when Mrs. Fletcher goes to interview Palmer Eddington, who reveals that Leo helped his father during the war, and that's why he decided to help his niece escape from Russia and the performance. When they turn the radio on and they find out that Mr. Tochinsky has been murdered, Mrs. Fletcher decides to stay in Boston. She then finds her way backstage. How this happened, I do not know. But she finds herself somewhere backstage, and she basically tells, she basically comes back there and they ask who she is, and she introduces herself, and he said, well, weren't you with a very distinguished looking gentleman with an accent? And she said, yes, Mr. Peterson. He went back home. He doesn't share a fascination with murder like I do. And immediately the Major recognizes her and is like, "Oh my God, Mrs. Fletcher, I love your books." And he immediately wants her to help him solve the crime. But FBI agent O'Farrell doesn't. In fact, he seems to not like Mrs. Fletcher being there at all and even asks her to leave at one point. But the Major is like, "No, I want her to help us, so she is coming with us." And he has no choice but to agree. He takes Mrs. Fletcher to the crime scene, and this is where there's a continuity error. When they first discover the body, Mr. Tochinsky is hunched over the dressing table with the knife in his back. When they go back to the crime scene, there's a scotch tape outline of his body on the floor where they said they found him. But that wasn't where they found him when we first saw his body. The Major tells Mrs. Fletcher that they found female nail marks on his face. So the Major has a theory that Alexander struck the dagger in Mr. Tochinsky's back because he was flirting with Irina. Mrs. Fletcher does him one better by basically saying that the Major could have killed him too. And he laughs that off and says, although that is possible, or although that is very amusing, it's not possible. Mrs. Fletcher decides to stay in town in Boston and calls Ethan, who's reluctant to help hide them. But after Mrs. Fletcher assures him that it'll be okay, he decides to do it reluctantly. She then has a knock at her door. It's the Major. He's back. He says that the lab reports have come back and asks if she would like to accommodate him to the police station. She, of course, says yes, and on they go. At the police station, they go through Mr. Tochinsky's effects, and his watch is among them. They find strange green fibers. And also, the woman who was on the news earlier ended up running on stage and again screaming, "Ban the ballet." So they know that she was on the premises. And she was arrested for doing so. And she was still in lockup. So one of the policemen take the watch down to compare the fibers and to see if any skin of Mr. Tochinsky's is under her nails. And it turns out that Mrs. Fletcher's suspicions are confirmed. The woman's name is Wilma Rydecker. And that's pretty much her purpose. And she's fingered as the murderer. They feel that she accosted Mr. Tochinsky because he wouldn't let her into the theater, and she plunged the dagger into his back. Mrs. Fletcher decides to go back to Cabot Cove. Back in Cabot Cove, Sheriff Tupper is going to get some coffee when he notices that Ethan has a new hired hand on the docks. It's Alexander, hiding in plain sight. When Amos goes up to him to talk to him, the only words that Alexander knows to say is yep and nope. So he can't really answer Sheriff Tupper's questions. Sheriff Tupper then notices Irina also hiding in plain sight and notices that she's beautiful, but doesn't notice that she's from Russia. Ethan sways him away, and then he decides to go wait for Mrs. Fletcher when she gets off the bus. He wants to know who killed Mr. Tochinsky, and if she knows where the two runaway Russians are. She denies knowing anything about the Russians, but tells Amos that Wanda is the one that killed him. But when she later has dinner that night, after telling Ethan not to hide them in plain sight, that somebody could see them, even though as far as we know there's no wanted posters of their picture, she then decides to have dinner with all of them, Ethan included, and then tells them all that she does not believe that that Wilma actually killed Mr. Tochinsky. When they're about to have dinner, there's a knock at the door, and a strange man comes in claiming that he needs a part for his boat, and that Ethan, being a captain, runs a shop in town that had the part, but he wasn't at the shop. They said he was there. Mrs. Fletcher goes into the kitchen when he asks to use the phone, and she asks him if he's from down east. He corrects her and says, "Oh yes, in Maine, up around Cape Cod." She then leaves and goes into the living room, and he leaves. She then tells everyone that comes out of hiding, because Leo and Alexandra and Irina went upstairs to hide, that the man that was just there is not who he says he was. They ask how she knows, and she tells Ethan that she asked him if he was from down east, which is what New Englanders call another word for Maine, which is how she knew that he wasn't really from Maine, which I did not know that, so I learned something new. So Mrs. Fletcher knows now that there's a bug on her phone, and she decides to play with this guy for putting it on there. So then the Major comes all the way down to Cabot Cove with a search warrant to search her house. And Sheriff Tupper is there to oversee the search. He goes into her kitchen and eats a cookie or something. Basically, they don't find anything, and Mrs. Fletcher demands to know why he has come all that way. Basically, Wanda has been cleared of the murder charges because she said she was never in the dressing room and her fingerprints were not found on the dagger. She says that she slipped through an open window that was left open, and she hid in a supply closet in the magician room. She then saw a man fitting Leo's description carrying in a violin case full of clothes. Then they checked up on who Leo Peterson was, and it turns out that he used to be from Russia and has basically is considered a traitor of Russia for fleeing. They apparently searched his house and found nothing, so they assumed since he was with Mrs. Fletcher that they would be there. But of course, they're not at Mrs. Fletcher's house. They turn up nothing. So Mrs. Fletcher then makes a call to Natalia back in Boston, telling her that Alexandra and Afina are safe and sound. She then gives Natalia a special message in Russian that Alexander said that she must know. From there, she asks Mr. Fleming to take her to Cabot Cove to see Jessica, where she claims she wants to join them and be free too. When she gets to Mrs. Fletcher's house, she says Alexander can't possibly go with Afina. He doesn't love her. Because the message that Mrs. Fletcher said in Russia meant, "I will love you forever." Mrs. Fletcher says that that was a lie. He did not tell her to say that. She needed her to admit her love for Alexandra. It is then revealed that Natalia is the one that killed Mr. Tochinsky with the dagger, because when she went to the dressing room and he discovered that they were missing, she realized that they had fled, and she loved Alexander so much that she was willing to protect him. She knew if Mr. Peterson radioed the Major that they would be onto them. So, in desperation, she plunged the dagger into his back, killing him instantly. The Major doesn't have to take her back to Russia because the crime was committed on American soil, so he has no jurisdiction. He allows the two, Alexander and Afina, to basically flee, and doesn't try to find them. He proves that he's a very nice person despite him being mean at times. He even expresses a fondness for fishing, but decides not to stay a couple of days like Miss Fletcher offers. And that's where the episode ends. This one, unfortunately, did not have big-name guest stars except for Tom Bosley from Happy Days. The rest of them, kind of aren't really known for much. This episode didn't really have a lot of twists and turns. I mean, it was interesting how she figured out that Natalia was the murderer was because Natalia wasn't on stage during the curtain call either, and there are supposed to be 6 girls, 3 on each side, to have a formation or something, and that's how she realized it. So let's go over the guest stars. Unfortunately, this is Clyde Atkins, who played Captain Ethan Craig. Last episode. There's not much information as to why he doesn't appear after this episode, I guess to make way for Seth Hazlitt, but let's go over what he's known for. And we're sad to see him go. He seems to be the one go-to person that will basically be filled, the void will be filled by Seth Hazlitt later on, which we'll get to him. Okay, he unfortunately died on January 27th, 1994 at the age of 67. He is known for Inherit the Wind, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, and The Killers. He's been in 232 different things. His last known credit is 1994's TV short, The Search, but it doesn't say what he played. His other known credit before that was Twisted Fear as Detective Lucky Douglas. He was in a Sherlock Holmes movie. He guest starred on In the Heat of the Night. He was in the sequel to The Gambler Returns, The Luck of the Draw. Oh, he played President Theodore Roosevelt. He guest starred on Matlock. The new Mike Hammer Show, Hotel. Yep, this is his last episode of Murder, She Wrote. He was on The Love Boat, Masquerade, Fantasy Island, BJ and the Bear, Police Story, all kinds of TV movies. He had a long, prosperous career, and we will miss him being on Murder, She Wrote. He was really a really great character. Okay. Carrie Armstrong played Irina, the one who fled. She is still alive. She is known for Razzle Dazzle, A Journey Through Dance, MDA, and Sea Change. She's been in 54 different things. She's still acting to this day. She was in the TV series Neighbors, Sea Change, the miniseries The Wrong Girl, like I said, Razzle Dazzle, A Journey into Dance, miniseries 200 Legends Under the Sea. Oh, she was on the original Dynasty. This is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote. She also was on the soap opera The Edge of Night, and she guest starred on Tales from the Dark Side, one of my favorite TV shows, horror-nology shows that you can't find. Dante Clark played the FBI agent who didn't like Mrs. Fletcher interfering in the investigation. He unfortunately passed away in 1998 at the age of 86. He is known for Destination Tokyo, Masquerade, Pride of the Marines, and Moonrise, all in the 1940s and 50s. Oh wow, his last known credit is another Murder, She Wrote episode in 1989 that we will get to eventually. He also guest starred on the new Mike Hammer Show, Highway to Heaven, Simon and Simon, Quincy MD, Fantasy Island, Hawaii Five-0, The Nancy Drew Hardy Boys Mysteries, Police Story, Police Woman, McMullen and Wife, the original Ironside, the new Perry Mason, Night Gallery, another one of my favorite horror analogy series. So he had a long, prosperous career. May he rest in peace. Okay. The actor that played the Major is William Conrad, and he looked familiar to me. So let's see. He passed away on February 11th, 1994 at the age of 73. He is known for Cannon, The Killers as Max in 1946, Hudson Hawk, and The Naked Jungle. His last known credit is Jake and the Fat Man. That's probably what I know him from. I remember when I think I seen some episodes of that show. He guest starred in Matlock, Hotel. This is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He had a very long career. He was the narrator of How the West Was Won, Gunsmoke. So he had a long, prosperous career, and he was really great in this role. Okay, the actor that played Alexander is George de la Pinta. Hope I said that right. He is still alive. He is known for Brain Donors, Jack's Place, Mighty Affinia. He's only been in 21 things: LA Law, The Dust Factory in 2004, Jack's Place, a TV series, Freddy's Nightmares, Star Trek The Next Generation, North and South, Book 2. And this is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He's mainly more of a dancer than an actor, so I kind of understand why he doesn't want to be in that. That he hasn't been in a lot of stuff, I mean. Okay. Leo was played by Herb Hartfield. He died in 1998 at the age of 81, and OMG! He played Dorian Gray in The Picture of Dorian Gray in 1945 that Angela Lansbury got her second Academy Award nomination from. How interesting! He's known for that, The Unexpected, King of Queens, and Chinatown at Midnight. His last known credit is a TV movie called Lies of the Twins, and he will appear in a handful of other episodes of Murder, She Wrote. So interesting. He had a long career. He appeared in 78 different projects, including a miniseries about the lives of Benjamin Franklin, Bonanza, The Wild Wild West. I mean, awesome actor he was. I'm surprised I didn't recognize him. I just saw that movie not too long ago, and she was so good in it. Skip Fleming was played by James Carell Jordan. He is still alive. He is known for Kingsman, The Golden Circle, Six Underground, Black Snake Moan, and a miniseries about Abraham Lincoln. He's still acting to this day. His last known credit is Avenue 5 as Man with a Crossbow. Okay, The Golden Circle. Kingsman, The Golden Circle, sorry. He was in the miniseries Haddonfield and McCoys. This will not be his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He will appear in a handful of others. He also guest starred on Coach and the spin-off series that didn't last very long, The Law and Harry McGraw, and Three's a Crowd, the spin-off from Three's Company, and Simon & Simon, and The New Hammer Show, the original Dukes of Hazzard, After School Special. So he's had quite a career and is continuing to do so, which is awesome. Good for him. Nathina was played by Vicky Kessler. I hope I said that right. She's not known for much. She only has 7 credits. She was in an 80s movie called Deadly Lessons. This is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote, and her last known credit. She also guest starred on Fantasy Island. So she didn't have a long career, which is sad. The guy who played Palmer Eddington is Paul Rudd, but not the Paul Rudd that you all are probably thinking. He's not known for much. He died in 2010 at the age of 70. He only has 13 credits. His last known credit is Kung Fu the Movie. He guest starred on Moonlighting. This is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He guest starred on Heart to Heart, Quincy M.E., Knots Landing. And that's pretty much it. But he was really good in this, so I'm kind of surprised he wasn't in more stuff. The woman that was like, ban the ballet, was played by Jessica Nelson. And she's not known for much either. Masters of the Universe, Hunter, Daddy's Boys, Where the Buffalo Roam. She was only in 21 different things, and her last known credit is College Humor Originals as a narrator in 2010. She was on Archie Bunker's Place. This is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote. And not much else she's known for. Alright, and our murder victim, Mr. Tochinsky, was played by Anthony DeLongis. I'm so sorry if he is still alive. He's known for Masters of the Universe as well. Roadhouse, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as crew, not acting in it, and Gangster Squad. He's been in 128 different things. He has a couple of things that hasn't been completed yet, like Knights and Fallen Cars 1066. Let's see, he was on Arrested Development, Midnight Texas, The Millers. He did some voiceover work for the Hitman video game, Gangster Squad. Trying to see if this is his only... Oh, he was in the original soap opera Santa Barbara. He also was on Days of Our Lives. MacGyver, the original MacGyver, sorry. Simon and Simon. The 80s version of The Twilight Zone. The new Mike Hammer show. And this is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote, which is a shame because obviously he's a good actor. Because he's been in all kinds of different things. It's too bad that he was only a murder victim in this episode. And that's it. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of big known guest stars in this episode. It was pretty interesting. Like I said, whenever there's an episode that's kind of slow going, Tom Bosley and Angela Lansbury just make it work, and so does Clyde Atkins. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this one, and as soon as I get done recording this, I'm going to watch the next episode and probably record that one tomorrow. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy crime solving! And everyone stay safe out there, and happy Halloween.